When tragedy struck unexpectedly, the palace's cat found herself utterly helpless, unable to protect her kitten from the looming danger. Just as all seemed lost, wouldn't you know who arrived to help? What followed is a series of events that will leave you spellbound. An unusual sound pierced the silence that blanketed the forest, a desperate, muffled cry that seemed to emanate from the depths of the thicket. It was unlike anything Gleb had ever heard before, a disturbing blend of despair and panic. Breaking from his usual patrol, Gleb tilted his head, trying to pinpoint the source of the call. The sound appeared to be coming from an old, gnarled tree standing at the edge of a marshy area. With each passing second, the cry grew louder and more frantic, as if someone or something was desperately calling for help. Driven by a mix of curiosity and unease, Gleb hurried towards the sound, abandoning his gear. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. The closer he got to the tree, the clearer the sounds became, cutting through the night's quiet. The undergrowth thinned, and Gleb suddenly found himself faced with an astonishing sight. In a small clearing, where water pooled everywhere, a young kitten, barely staying afloat, was fighting the waves with its last ounce of strength. Its terrified eyes were filled with horror as it struggled to swim, each attempt weaker than the last. Gleb froze, realizing this was a palace's cat, known for its caution and aggression, especially when threatened. Moreover, palace's cats are excellent swimmers. He pondered, why wasn't the mother cat coming to her kitten's rescue? Scanning the surroundings, Gleb noticed a glint of metal against the shadowed landscape. On closer inspection, he saw the mother cat. Her paw was firmly trapped in a poacher's snare that was anchored to the tree trunk. Her eyes, full of terror and pain, pleaded for help. She was straining against the trap with all her might, but it held her too tightly. Gleb's heart sank. He realized that the kitten's only hope was him. Without hesitation, the man approached the water's edge. He removed his shoes, rolled up his sleeves, and stepped into the muddy mire. The cold water sent shivers through him, and his clothes quickly became soaked, but Gleb's gaze was fixed on the kitten. He slowly reached out, speaking softly, "Don't be afraid, little one. I'm here." The man's voice seemed to calm the panicked animal a little. The kitten froze, its frantic movements subsiding. When Gleb was close enough, he gently scooped up the wet, trembling body. Back on the shore, the man held the kitten tightly to his chest, trying to warm it with his body heat. However, he knew he couldn't leave the mother cat in this state. Approaching the animal, Gleb examined the chain, trying to figure out a way to free her without causing pain. Suddenly, the crunch of snow and the sound of voices coming from the forest broke the silence. Gleb froze, realizing that the poachers were probably returning. The situation had become extremely dangerous, and he needed to act fast. The man hid the kitten in the dense undergrowth, making sure its hiding place was well concealed. After that, Gleb took up a position nearby, keeping watch from the shadows. From his hidden vantage point, Gleb saw two men, dressed in ragged and dirty clothes, carrying rifles and a collection of traps and chains slung carelessly over their shoulders. Their voices, coarse and muffled, were punctuated by occasional laughter, betraying their confidence that they were not being observed. As the poachers approached the tree where the cat was trapped, Gleb began to make out snippets of their conversation. "First, check on that palace's cat," one of them ordered, pointing to the unfortunate animal. "That critter's pelt is worth a pretty penny." Gleb felt a surge of fury welling up within him. His fists clenched involuntarily, but he knew that an open confrontation now could prove fatal for both him and the cat. Pushing his emotions aside, he decided to act calmly, carefully observing the intruder's every move. The palace's cat, chained to the tree, began to strain against the chain and let out a low growl at the sight of the man. One of the poachers pulled out a ring of keys to check the trap's security. Seeing this, Gleb knew there was a slim opportunity to turn the tools against their owners. Picking up a small stone from the ground, he threw it toward a thick bush in the distance. The rustle immediately caught the poacher's attention. "Did you hear that?" one of them whispered, peering cautiously in the direction of the noise. "Let's go check it out," the other one nodded, pointing his rifle towards the bushes. While the poachers searched for the source of the sound, Gleb slipped unnoticed towards the place where they'd left their equipment. Among the scattered items, he found a heavy wrench. Realizing he was running out of time, he hurried towards the tree to free the palace's cat. However, the sound of the poacher's return stopped him in his tracks. Keeping his cool, Gleb stepped out of hiding, holding the wrench in his hand, and said in a firm voice, "Leave. You have no business here." The Maine poacher chuckled and replied mockingly, "Do you seriously think you can scare us? This is our territory, and that palace's cat is ours too." Gleb positioned himself between the men and the animal, his expression turning implacable. "I won't let you take her," he said with such conviction that the poachers hesitated for a moment. Realizing his advantage, Gleb added, "You're not alone here. Ranger patrols regularly pass through this area. Do you think you'll be able to avoid running into them?" The mention of the Rangers clearly unsettled the poachers. After a short but tense exchange of glances, one of them mumbled, "It's not worth the risk." Casting a final glance at Gleb, the men disappeared into the forest. Only when they were gone did Gleb allow himself to relax. He approached the cat, who was still growling, but more calmly now, and carefully removed the chain that was holding her tightly to the tree. The freed animal first looked around slowly, and then hurried towards the bushes, making soft, calling sounds. The kitten responded to the call, running out of its hiding place and rushing to its mother. Their reunion was tender. They nuzzled each other and purred with contentment. Gleb, watching this, felt a deep sense of relief. This day had not been in vain. He wondered if he would ever have the chance to meet these magnificent creatures again. As it turned out, his wish was destined to come true very soon. Several months had passed since Gleb managed to free the palace's cat from the clutches of the poachers. A misty morning shrouded the thick forest in a light haze when Gleb, on one of his usual patrols, moved along the winding trails. As the fog gradually thinned, he saw a thin wisp of smoke rising into the air, like a beacon indicating the presence of a camp. Crouching cautiously, he used the dense foliage as cover to approach unnoticed. The sounds coming from the smoke-filled area blended with the rustling leaves, creating a nearly imperceptible cacophony. However, as Gleb got closer, he began to distinguish quiet voices. Hidden among the bushes, he observed what was happening. He saw three men, rough-looking in appearance, gathered around a campfire. A pot hung over the fire, in which they were apparently cooking something quickly. Hunting gear, traps, nets, and two rifles leaning carelessly against a tree were scattered around. Gleb knew that the situation required caution. Unarmed, except for the small knife he always carried with him, he knew that direct confrontation could lead to disaster. The only sensible solution was to retreat and seek help later. But fate had other plans. As Gleb began to slowly back away, his foot accidentally stepped on a dry twig, and its soft crunch echoed in the morning quiet like a gunshot. The men became alert and turned around. Holding his breath, Gleb froze, but realized he had been seen. His heart was pounding, but he quickly assessed the situation. The men grabbed their weapons and charged towards him. The fog that had previously obscured the view now worked to his advantage. It concealed Gleb's movements, allowing him to slip deeper into the forest. Quickening his pace, Gleb felt his breathing become heavy, but he continued to move, increasing the distance between himself and his pursuers. However, his relief was short-lived. A rough hand suddenly grabbed his shoulder, spun him around, and pinned him against a nearby tree. Gasping with shock, he saw a sinister smirk on the face of one of the men, apparently the leader. "Thought you could spy on us and just walk away?" he taunted. Accusations rained down. The poachers were angry that Gleb's efforts had left their traps and nets empty. As one of them bound his hands with a strong rope, words that sent a chill through Gleb were uttered. "You've been getting in our way for too long. It's time to put an end to it once and for all." After tying him up, they dragged him deeper into the woods, away from the trails where someone might accidentally pass. Every movement, every gesture, filled Gleb with growing horror. He knew his life was hanging by a thread and hoped only for a miracle. When they reached a quiet and secluded spot, the poacher's leader suddenly raised his hand, signaling everyone to stop. "This is far enough. Nobody will find him here," he said with grim certainty. As Gleb mentally prepared himself for the worst outcome, a sudden rustling in the thick bushes caught everyone's attention. A formidable cat emerged from the shadows. Her focused gaze was fixed on the men holding Gleb. Several months had passed, but she hadn't forgotten the man who had once saved her life. Recognizing his scent and voice, letting out a powerful roar, the predator launched an attack with lightning speed. Stunned by the sudden threat, the poachers tried to flee, releasing Gleb from their grasp. When the predators in human form had been forced to retreat, the cat turned her attention to Gleb, who was now trying to untie the tight knots. She slowly and cautiously approached him, nudging her nose against the ropes as if to show her intention to help. Gleb, understanding her plan, allowed her to bite through the strong bindings with her powerful teeth. In a few moments, he was free. Getting to his feet, he turned to his rescuer, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, reaching out tentatively towards her. The cat watched him attentively. Her eyes reflected tension mixed with calm confidence. It was at this moment that a deep understanding arose between them. The man and the beast both understood the shared danger they faced and the protection they could offer one another. Finally, the predator nodded to Gleb as if saying goodbye and, turning, slowly disappeared into the dense foliage. Her duty was done. In the days that followed, Gleb often found himself looking towards the forest, pondering his unusual rescuer. He knew she was still out there, somewhere among the trees. The connection that had been established between them reminded him once again of how powerful a person's influence can be if they choose to protect nature. Every time he remembers this incident, Gleb can't help but smile. After all, every good deed returns good sooner or later. Dear viewers, what do you think of this amazing story? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.